Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
If you're a fan of a quarterback needy team, there is no doubt that you have heard your local sports talk shows, the national sports talk shows, talk a ton about Arch Manning, right? Like, he is the number one vessel for a lot of conversations that involve future quarterback play. There's talking about tanking for Arch Manning or teams loading up with draft picks to get Arch Manning. I've heard it from people in Cleveland where it's like people are like, oh, we should get some draft picks next year so we can trade up for Arch Manning. I think there is one giant plot hole in that theory, which is like, hey, if Arch Manning is as good as people think that Arch Manning is going to be, then why would the team that has the rights to draft him not draft him? I don't think people think that one out enough. I know some people will go to, well, it could be like an Eli Manning situation where the Manning family is not happy with the team that has the pick to go get him, so they force a different team there. One, the odds of that happening are very unlikely, right? Like, the Eli Manning situation was super specific, and it was really only allowed to happen because the Chargers were 100% okay with Phillip Rivers instead of Eli Manning. Like, if the Chargers really wanted to draft Eli, they could have forced it through, and there really wouldn't be nothing. There wouldn't be much that the Manning family could have done about it. But even a situation like that happening, which from what I understand was largely because of a personal beef between the ownership of the Chargers and Arch Manning, even if that situation pops up again, which again feels increasingly unlikely, still doesn't guarantee that team wants to trade the pick, and it still doesn't guarantee that you're the team that the Manning family angles their player to go to, or you're in a position to be able to do that. A lot of conspiracy theories about Arch, like, oh yeah, we're going to trade for Arch Manning. It's like, I mean, like, if we're talking about Arch like he's a Andrew Luck level prospect, and a Andrew Luck level prospect means that even if you have a quarterback, guess what you're going to do? You're going to draft Arch Manning, right? If that's what Arch Manning truly is. So a lot of like the things that people throw out and act like it's going to be like easy to go grab Arch Manning, or all you need is like a couple of extra firsts to go grab Arch Manning. If he is who people say he is, then that's not going to really be that possible, right? Like, I think if you're a Browns fan, and we'll talk about this in a different video, it would be more useful to set your eyes at other solutions for your quarterback problem. But let's stay focused here on this whole Arch Manning thing, right? Like, there's the whole plot hole about Arch Manning and trading for Arch Manning, which is, if Arch Manning is really that good, why would that team trade the pick for Arch Manning? And why are people so confident that a team that doesn't need to draft Arch Manning gets the pick for Arch Manning? And like, really, let's think about it. The only teams I could see just neglecting to draft Arch, if Arch is truly this generational prospect, would be like the Bengals, maybe the Bengals, because the Bengals might want to get cheaper at quarterback. Basically anybody other than like the Chiefs would probably take Arch, and even the Chiefs might consider it if Arch was truly that strong of a prospect. But that's the other part about Arch Manning I want to talk about, because again, Arch Manning feels more like an ideal than a actual football player. Like, we talk about the idea of Arch Manning more than we talk about the reality of Arch Manning. And this happens with players who have a oversized media profile compared to their body of work. We talked about this with Shedeur Sanders. The idea of Shedeur Sanders and what Shedeur could be or what people think Shedeur should be dominates the conversation about Shedeur to the point to where you bring up the reality of Shedeur Sanders and what he has done so far in the NFL. People get upset at the dissonance that you point out as if you created the dissonance yourself, right? Like that is the issue with talking about these things, right? The idea of Arch Manning is of this Andrew Luck level prospect. The reality of Arch Manning is that he's a solid college quarterback who has some really interesting tools that may or may not become extremely interesting by the end of the college football season. But the idea of Arch Manning is, well, driven by the last name Manning. And I think we got to have a full conversation about this because we have these conversations on the internet and because Arch Manning is such a lightning rod for hot takes in this god-awful sports media landscape that we live in, the conversation about how much the Manning last name affects the stock of Arch Manning either becomes one of two sides, right? Either you're of the side that believes that Arch Manning is actually just by himself an incredible prospect who would be this well hyped up if he weren't a Manning, right? Like if his name were Arch Johnson or Arch Jennings or whatever, like come up with the last name, Arch Stevens, he would still be this highly regarded of a prospect. And then there's this other side of it that thinks that Arch Manning is being propped up on pure nepotism. And it's not really that. It's not in the middle of those two things either. It's just different than what people think because to really understand why it is that Arch Manning is gonna carry this amount of hype and why it is specifically about his last name, you really gotta do a kind of like understanding of why the last name Manning is so goddamn important, right? Because it does drive a significant portion of the value for Arch Manning. Like we would not be talking about Arch Manning as some kind of undeniable number one overall pick since the day he stepped onto campus at UT Austin if he weren't Arch Manning. And the Manning part is the part that matters. And the reason that last name carries so much weight, carries so much importance. And again, I'm not trying to say that Arch Manning is a terrible prospect or he doesn't have good traits or that he's not a true 5-star or any of that. I'm just saying that like we wouldn't have been talking about Arch Manning for 3 years if his name were Archibald Renningbacher or some shit like that, right? Like we're talking about him specifically because of the Manning last name. I would be making a video for a Browns channel about Arch Manning in 2026 when he's not even set to hit the draft until 2027 if his last name were not Manning. And the reason that last name is important is not just because his uncles were really good at football. It's about the work that his uncles have done since their careers have ended. Because the Manning family name is not just a brand associated with strong quarterback play, championship level quarterback play. The Manning family name has spent every day over the last 25 to 30 years creating itself and making itself a NFL institution. Think about the level of power that last name has, having a positive association with that last name has, right? Like Russell Wilson was one of those guys who got the Manning pass late in his not college career, but in his pre-draft process that allowed him to go a little bit higher in the draft and get some more eyes on him when it comes to what he was going to be able to do in the preseason with Seattle. Another name that benefited massively from getting the Manning family co-sign is Daniel Jones, who not a lot of people thought was going to be a top 10 pick until it happened. And when it happened, the name Manning was brought up quite a lot after it was, because Daniel Jones had a great relationship with the Manning family. It is still something that carries a ton of impact to today. I don't think it's a coincidence that where does Daniel Jones choose to rebound? The Indianapolis Colts, which strong Manning family connection there, right? Like the Manning family doesn't just have pull for the Mannings, but getting a cosign from the Manning family can make or break you as a quarterback prospect. How many times have we heard that somebody's stock fell because they didn't wake up on time at the Manning Family Passing Academy, or that somebody's stock rose after having a great week at the Manning Passing Academy? They aren't just a last name. They aren't just the memory of two players that won Super Bowls, multiple Super Bowls. They are a NFL institution. And that's a lot different and a lot more powerful than simple nepotism. Arch Manning is going to go super high in whatever draft he has, unless he has a completely awful college career, right? If he just has a mediocre college career, he will go in the top 5 because teams will feel the need to draft him because he's a Manning. And not to say that it's the Manning family forcing these teams to draft their nephew. No, not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that the Manning institution within NFL circles is such a attractive and powerful brand that they're going to feel the need to take the risk for Arch Manning simply because he is a Manning. And the Manning family has almost made themselves nepotism proof because of the level of success that they have had in that family tree, right? Arch Manning, and then the second generation family members, and Eli, and then Peyton was successful, and then Eli was successful. You have seen 3 levels of that family tree be successful in the NFL level, which means that you're going to give whoever comes from that family tree a real shot. Think about it like this. If you watch pro wrestling, you know that there is one family outside of like the McMahon family, obviously, that has been able to dominate the ranks in the WWE, which is the Anoli family, right? This is Roman Reigns. This is The Rock. This is Rikishi. This is the Wild Samoans, right? Like this is a long legacy of wrestlers, of top level wrestlers. I think Jimmy Snuka at one point in time was even associated with the Anoli family. And what that family has become to the institution of WWE is its own little institution itself, right? The Usos, the whole bloodline storyline. This has become its own thing. So whenever there is a new prospect in the Anoa'i family, all of a sudden, all those resources get pushed towards that guy, right? And it doesn't matter how good they are in developmental or how good they're doing at the performance center. They're going to get a shot. They're going to get a push because they're part of that institution. And the WWE has had a lot of success relying on that institution. So they're going to give that a chance. If there is a Anoa'i family for the institution that is the NFL, within the NFL, it is the Manning family, which means that even if Arch is just super mid at Texas this year, somebody's probably going to take him number 1 overall. And they're probably not going to be willing to give up their opportunity to take Arch number 1 overall. Think about it like this. Arch Manning has the institutional backing of not just the Manning family, but because he is in that Manning family, the institutional backing of the NFL, which is powerful, right? Like that means that whoever has an opportunity to get him is going to have a lot of pressure to take him. On top of that institutional pressure, think about it like this. On top of that institutional pressure, Arch Manning plays quarterback. And if the Titans weren't willing to move off of Cam Ward, if the Raiders are unwilling to move off of Fernando Mendoza, what makes anybody think that if Arch Manning is there for a team that isn't even QB needy, but just at the point to where they could look or at the point to where they can lose as many games to get the number 1 overall selection? What makes anybody think that that team's going to pass that opportunity up? It's this whole like, oh, we got to get assets to trade for Arch Manning thing. It's far-fetched to begin with because Arch Manning is not going to be traded for. Arch Manning is going to be drafted by the team that gets the number 1 overall pick because of all of those things that go behind him, regardless of if Arch Manning's college career is even that good. Because again, they're not drafting Arch Manning as much as they're drafting the idea of Arch Manning. And the idea of Arch Manning is pumped up by one of the NFL's greatest internal institutions, which is the Manning family. The NFL and NFL owners have been bred and educated to trust the Manning family name. Every new owner that gets a team, what do they talk about? They reached out to the Manning family and they took the Manning family's advice. They are a trusted brand amongst all 32 owners. I know people are like, oh, well, the Browns are going to want Arch Manning a lot because the Browns have a connection to the Manning family. I got news for you. All 32 teams have connections to the Manning family, and that's on purpose because, again, Manning family is an institution, not necessarily just a last name. I don't think Arch Manning is worth talking about for the Browns for the most part, simply because the Browns are very unlikely to get the number 1 overall pick next year. Very unlikely. And unless the Browns have the number 1 overall pick, they're probably more than likely almost 100% not going to be able to draft Arch Manning. And you can sit there and say, how can you say that, Quincy? Arch Manning hasn't even played. Are you that big of a believer in Arch Manning? No, I'm not that big of a believer in Arch Manning. I have no clue how his final year at Texas could go. It could be amazing. According to guys like Nate Tice, Arch Manning was really playing at a high level towards the end of the year. But it could also be pretty mediocre, like his season was most at Texas. And I don't think it matters if it's mediocre. He could go out there and be mid, and he's probably going to be the number 1 overall pick because I'm not betting on Arch Manning playing lights out at Texas in order for him to go number 1. I'm betting on the NFL wanting to bet on the institution of the Manning family, which high possibility they're going to do that. Right? They've done more ridiculous things for less powerful institutions within the NFL itself. The idea that they're going to skirt the Manning family and all the work that the Manning family has done for 30 something years to cement themselves as this institution, as this authority when it comes to quarterback play, and not draft the first Manning disciple available for the last 20 years is ludicrous. If he could walk and chew bubblegum, they're going to draft him number 1 overall. And once you understand that, it makes all the talk about Arch Manning unappealing because it doesn't matter how good he plays. It doesn't matter if he has a great year at Texas. He could get injured at Texas. He's going to go number 1 overall when he declares for the draft because he's a Manning. And we can have our feelings about whether that's fair or not. I'm not here to debate whether it's fair or not. I don't really care to. A lot of shit happens in the NFL, in sports, that's unfair, and it just is what it is. What I am here to say is that this is more than likely how it's going to go down. And if we know that Arch Manning is likely, because of all those institutional factors, to go number 1 overall, and you don't think the Browns are going to have the number 1 overall pick, then guess what? We probably got to focus on other things, or other things are probably more worth the energy than making up conspiracy theories about how you're going to finagle Arch Manning. You know, the Browns' connection to the Manning family is not unique amongst NFL circles. I would say it's probably one of the weaker connections to the Manning family. Like, I know everybody's like making it out because Jimmy Haslam went to Tennessee and so did Peyton Manning, but they don't have a relationship as far as I know, Peyton Manning and Jimmy Haslam. There's some rumors that Jimmy has a relationship with the elder Manning, Arch Manning, but, you know, I don't know if he's the true patriarch of that family in that way. I do know that there's no real relationship between Jimmy and Eli. And look, Jimmy's relationship with the Manning family, probably one of the weaker ones amongst all the other teams. So like this idea that Jimmy's going to have this unique relationship with them, I don't know if I buy it. I don't know. I've seen the Manning family be at other teams' camps. I've never seen the Manning family at Browns camp. I've never seen the Manning family publicly associate with Jimmy Haslam, but I have seen them publicly associate with other owners of other teams, which makes me think that the connection is probably stronger elsewhere. So even if there was a Eli Manning force a trade somewhere else, I don't think Cleveland's going to be a candidate for that either. There's no evidence of it. But that's my thoughts about Arch. I wanted to get that perspective out because I feel like a lot of the talk about Arch kind of ignores the institutional power of the Manning family. And I want to get that off my chest. But y'all have a great one. Have an even better night. Peace.